Did, because obviously he introduced me to yourself. I haven't seen him since then, actually, since we were in Clitheroe. That's been
Right.
a long, long time. So that was last year, wasn't it?
I think it was October.
It was. God, that's too long. I
Well,
need to
that's
get.
yeah. Quite a few things have happened since then.
Yeah, just a bit, because I know he appeared on ITV.
Yeah, I
Um,
missed that actually.
it was brilliant. I mean, he's always going to be brilliant, isn't he? Because he's that sort of person, his age. But yeah, it was fantastic, and
Yeah.
he's obviously, I've seen he's kind of upped his operation,
Yes.
and he's outputting more and stuff, and I've been using the tinctures as well, which have helped me drastically in every area of my life.
Well, that's brilliant.
But yeah, and I'm so happy that he's introduced me to yourself, or people like yourself. And we had a brief chat, and then we've been going back and forth trying to get a time. And God, October, it's a
I
long,
know.
long ass time. I can't believe how much that's flown. And we've had Christmas and New Year, and then it seems oh God, it's my birthday this month as well.
Well,
Just
happy
like,
birthday.
thank you. So it only seems like yesterday that we sort of celebrated New Year.
Yeah.
And Maureen, thank you very much for taking the time and appearing on the podcast.
Well,
And
thank you for inviting me. I'm honoured.
it's been a conversation that I've been looking forward to since October last year. And for those that don't know who you are, and maybe not come across your name, and even though I know you're very well known in the circles that you sort of frequent, please introduce yourself and let people know who you are and what you're about.
Right. Well, I'm Maureen Little, and I'll perhaps give you a potted chronology of my
Yeah.
life so far. And I say so far because I'm hoping I've still got lots of things that I can still do. Yeah, well, I grew up way down south in Sussex on a market garden. My dad had a market garden. So I've known how to grow things since I was sort of knee high to, I was going to say grasshopper, but I think bumblebee's probably more appropriate,
It's definitely
actually.
more apt.
And then I sort of strayed from the horticultural path a bit because when I left school, I joined the Women's Royal Naval Service, as it was
Wow.
then. But that's the women have been incorporated into the male service now, so you can tell how long ago that was. I'm not going to say exactly how old I am, but people will probably guess from that.
People will start Googling. That's the problem
Yeah,
with Google nowadays.
exactly. And then I got married, you know, the usual, had children, brought up my children. And then I was at a bit of a loose end, so I decided to do a degree in English literature, which I didn't do straight from school. It was a bit scary. Leaving school, going straight to uni. I wasn't ready for it then.
No, I don't.
Um,
Not a lot of people are, and I think that
yeah,
that that I always struggle with that. That sort of natural sort of chronology of school is like you go nursery, then you go primary school, secondary school,
yeah,
sixth form, then university. And I must admit, I think that there's a big jump between school and A levels when sixth
yes,
form, the huge
yeah,
jump, and a lot I know for a fact I wasn't ready.
mm,
Um, and I
mm,
could have probably done with going to work for 10 years
yes,
and then
yeah,
then attempting A levels.
yeah.
But I didn't bother. I attempted the first year and then thought, yeah, no, I'm not good for this. See you in a bit.
Yeah. Well, I did manage A levels at school, but then that jump to uni, it was just
Mm.
too much. So, as I say, I joined the Women's Royal Naval Service, and then much later, when I was older, when the children were not quite grown up, but almost, I decided that I needed to stretch the brain cells a little bit. So, I enrolled on a degree course in English literature, which was brilliant. I loved every minute of it. And I actually ended up staying on at that uni. It was in Bedford. And I ended up teaching. So I finished my degree. And then the following year, I was teaching undergraduates, which I think I was the first. And I don't think it's ever happened since, actually. So, but that was great. And then, yeah, we moved. I was on a part time contract at that point, and then we moved up to Lancashire. And of course, my part-time contract with the uni was was not transferred.
Mm.
So I thought, what do I do now? So I had a yearning. So I did an MA at Lancaster in women's studies. Funnily enough, I mean, people automatically think when I say I did women's studies, oh, she's a raving feminist. Yeah, well, I am a feminist in that, in that, you know, I believe in equality for women and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. But that covered a whole range of subjects, actually.
Well, it's a multifaceted term
Yes,
nowadays, is feminism, and when people sort of start talking about it, it's like, at what level are we talking sort of feminism at this day and age? Are we talking, you know, the demonization of men, or are we talking the championing of women? Because
yeah,
championing of women, I'm all for it. Demonization
absolutely.
of men, definitely not.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one, Lewis.
Yeah,
Definitely. So the MA that I did covered a whole range of subjects: you know, sociology, literature, art history, religion. So it was really interesting. And I did it as almost a stopgap, really. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it afterwards. But then something hit me in that I wanted to go back to my roots, quite literally. So I did a garden design course at
cool.
Myesco College.
That's like Chelsea Flower Show-esque kind of.
Yeah,
I used to
yeah.
love them programs. I really did. I used to love. What was the Irish guy that were?
Dear Dear no,
It
what was his
is.
name?
It's
Dear
Dermot.
McGavin.
That's so.
That's it.
He was fantastic. He got me interested in gardening, which is something that I'm not. You know, I
Yeah,
don't mind. I like being outside, construction and stuff. I like all that stuff. But I was never sort of into learning which plants go with which plants, and, you know,
yeah,
how gardens actually work as an ecosystem. And he was so good, and in that program, of like explaining why he's planting this and why he's planting that and why this
exactly.
works. And it was really interesting for somebody that's
Yeah.
like a bit of a geek for knowledge, like myself. It was really good. So that's the sort of course that you were doing at MySco.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Dear McGavin was ahead of his time, actually. He was the sort of enfant terrible of the horticulture world at that point. But you know, a lot of what he was advocating, it's mainstream now. You
Mm.
know, so many people like that are ahead of their time, and it takes a while for the rest of us to catch up with them. So that took me into garden design, and after that I had a little allotment, where because I thought I need to start growing things again, because that's where I started, really,
Mm.
on my dad's market garden. So I had a little allotment and started growing a few things, and I had excess, so I sold a few things in a little shop on site as well. And one day this chap came in and he said, "Have you got any local honey?" And I said, "You know, no, I can't. I just can't get hold of any." He said, "Do you want some?" So I
Oh,
said, "Oh, all right then." And I thought, "Is this it? This sounded a bit like, you know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, under the counter stuff." But I said, "Yeah, okay." And it turned out he was the local beekeeper. Who, on one occasion, I said to him, "You know, when you go out and check your bees, because I was fascinated about honey and where it came from,
mm.
can I come with you? Have you got a spare suit? Can I come with you and have a look at the bees?" And he said, "Yeah, by all means." So at that point, I was hooked. So then I started keeping my own bees.
What do you think
Um,
it was with it? And the reason why I ask is from my perspective, bees have always mesmerized me, to the point
Totally.
where, you know, you watch them on everybody's seen it on a summer's day, and you've got like a lavender bush, and
Yeah.
you'll watch them come and go, and you wonder where they fly off to, and then they come back, and there's maybe 10 or 20. And I can sit there for hours and just watch them, because I find them completely. And then when you sort of look into it a little bit more, and you find out that there's not just one type of bee or
Oh,
bumblebee.
that's right.
You know, when people think about bees, they think about the bumblebee mostly, which is the big
Yeah.
fuzzy furry one. But then I found out there's like hundreds of
Oh,
types of different
literally.
different
Yes.
bees.
Yeah.
And then, what was it that grabbed you, that made you? Was it purely from the honey aspect, like you said, or was it?
No,
No.
no, no. I think the word you used there, Lewis, mesmerising.
Mm.
I was, as soon as I saw. Let me go back a little bit, because
Yes. Yeah.
the Craig was his name. He said, be prepared. You'll either be overawed by them, or you'll be running scared. He said, you get one of two reactions when you open up the hive and see these, up to 60,000 bees in a hive during the
Mm.
summer months, even up to 100,000. That's a heck of a lot of bees,
Mm.
So the reaction either is, wow, look at that, which
Yeah.
was me, or, oh,
A run for the hills.
yeah, exactly. But for me, it was, oh, wow, look at that. And I think it was just the way that, as a as an they work as an entity.
Mm.
They all work towards the same goal. And I think if we could translate that into human life, for the good of the colony, then we'd be an awful lot better. So I'm sort of philosophizing a little bit here. It's going to a meta level,
Yeah,
but
but it's
but there is
true.
a correlation, I think. We
Well,
can learn an awful lot from the natural world and the way
it's
that they operate.
one of my favorite sayings, and I never get it right who said it, but it's like, great leaders plant seeds of trees that grow under which they know the shade they'll never sit.
Exactly.
Like, and
Yeah.
if we took that mantra, knowing that, I'm not going to get the benefit of this, but in 2 generations time it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Not too many people are in it for the quick reward,
Oh,
and I've always called it kick the can politics, which is ultimately,
yes.
oh well, we'll just do this quick fix, it'll be somebody else's problem in 20-30 years, and I won't be here, and I won't be bothered, and I made my millions, and I don't give a rat's ass.
Yeah.
And there's far too much of that going on. But
I totally agree.
there is that ideology. It's ideology is the wrong word. It's almost, it's an envy that
Mm.
you look at, things like ants, bees, things
Yes.
that live in a colony, and you think they all seem to be in harmony.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and it is. I mean, I must admit, when I've watched the bees in one of my old homes, we had I had 2 bird boxes. I put 2 bird boxes up, one on the left hand side of the garden, one on the right hand side of the garden. And one year, the year before I left, we had honeybees in the right hand side
Oh,
bird box, and we had bumblebees on the left hand side bird box.
brilliant.
And they used to fight in the middle. They used to have, like, come together and sort of, there'd be like a big battle in the middle,
Yeah.
because we had
Sort
all
of,
the lavender bushes in the garden.
oh,
Um,
yeah.
but I could sit there and watch them for hours and hours and hours, and it was just it was really fascinating to just watch these beings that really didn't care whether I was there or not, and just
Exactly.
were going about, their day,
Yeah.
trying to get on
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah. They were totally focused on what
Mm.
their task was. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I started keeping bees myself, and then I'm going to skip a little bit, because then I found myself at Stid Gardens in Ribchester, which is
Yeah, yeah.
sort of halfway between sort of Preston and Clitheroe, really. And there I set up a sort of a mini plant centre, if you will. But I started specialising in plants for all kinds of pollinators, not just bees,
Mm.
because it includes butterflies, moths, flies, and so on. And that's also where I started writing, because if I take you back to Craig again, he was the beekeeper. He was asked to write a book about beekeeping in urban situations,
Mm.
which was fascinating, actually. And he asked me, because he knew my literary background, could I write a chapter on gardening for bees? So I said, yeah, I can do that. So I started writing this chapter, and the more I got into it, the more I thought, oh, crikey, there's a book here. So anyway, I restrained myself and kept it to a chapter. But then I thought, there is a book here. There's so much information out there. So you know, Lewis, it was the same old story of being in the right place at the right time with the right topic.
It often is.
Oh, absolutely. So I did a little bit of research and found a publisher called How To Books based in Oxford. So I sent them an email with, and they welcomed new proposals for books. So I emailed them with a sample chapter, a little bit about myself, and said, you know, please do get in touch if you're interested. Totally understand if you're not, but thank you for, you know, reading my email. That was the Tuesday, and by the Thursday I got a contract.
Wow.
Which was incredible. You know, just doesn't happen, but for some reason it happened to me. So that was the start of my sort of writing career, really. So that was the very first book, and a couple of years ago I just finished writing my most recent book. So that was, you know, 6 books later. So I was incredibly fortunate to, as I say, to be in the right place at the right time with the right topic.
It's funny how I've been in circles over the past, and obviously you will have been as well, with people that we know with in the circles. You know, you got Adrian and Catherine and all them, and that sort of dharma and that purpose that people look for, and they can search for it the whole life. You know, what the meaning, why are they here? What is their aim in life? And quite often, people that I've met or spoken to that found it, it's kind of started from when they've been young.
Yes.
And you know, you've done the English literature degree, and then you've done you know, the garden design, and then you've met this person by chance that introduced you to beekeeping. And if you hadn't have done all them things, you probably wouldn't have written a book, because you wouldn't have done the English literature degree. And
exactly.
Every single thing has led you to the point of, you know, where you are, which is I always find, I find that fascinating. And that's why I love doing these podcasts, is because it's just you know, you look at what, you know, our mutual friend Adrian's been through. It's like, he's been through the ringer and done every little aspect. And then just by chance and trying to find something to help his missus at the time, through something, he's stumbled upon fungi, which that's dictated his life for the past God knows how long.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always find that the people that you should be listening to are the people that have just naturally found themselves in that space, or found themselves in that area. And like you say, you know, 6 books. And I think I've got them all. Tell me if I'm wrong. So you've got the bee garden.
Yeah, that was do you know, Lewis, I was just looking at it. That's like 20 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah, no, in fact, probably, no, not quite as much as that. No, it's, my maths is hopeless. 2011 it was published. So, you know, we're talking about 15 years ago.
Wow, yeah.
Which I can't believe it, you know.
Still a long time. And then the kitchen herb garden.
Yeah.
30 herbs for your kitchen.
Yeah.
Home herbal.
Yeah.
How to cook with herbs.
Oh, there's a load of ebooks.
Little ones, yeah. Plants for pollinators.
Yeah.
And what is this? Country skills and crafts.
Yeah, that's the one I co-authored that with Craig the beekeeper, actually.
Yes, I thought you did. I remember seeing his name on it, or I remember seeing Craig on it. And I think, well, they're the ones that I've got. Tell me if I've missed any.
Yeah. Oh, the one that came after the bee garden was plants and planting plans for a bee garden. So that didn't. It went down really well with the general public, but not so well with garden designers, because I gave away all the professional secrets, because I thought, you know, tough. You know, why? You know,
right. You know, it's not what they need to remember. It's not about them. It's about the bees.
Exactly. Well, that was my point. That was the whole point in me doing that one, actually. So so that people could actually put into practice what I suppose what I was preaching, really, giving them the skills, the tool in a book to be able to do that.
Well, it's important. It really is, and I know we spoke when we first met of how important. Around 75% of our food crops globally, it depends on pollinators,
Absolutely.
and that's people don't. I know the common sort of thought process: if there's no bees, there's no us. We'll cease to be because food won't grow, and it's not just bees, but obviously they play a big role, and that there's not enough public knowledge. I feel
Mm.
on how important and how integral these pollinators are to not just our survival, but pretty much every species survival. Because if
Yeah.
there's no pollinators, then plants die. Plants
Yep.
can't reproduce. Therefore,
Exactly.
fruit doesn't get made. Therefore, species and food chains start collapsing left, right, and center.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, um, do you think this sort of subject, whether it be apiarism or anything along those lines, should be more prominent within sort of mainstream education?
I do. I think, I mean, certainly when I was at school, way back, more decades I'm going to admit to, that, that there was absolutely nothing like that.
Mm,
However, I do think there's a greater awareness these days
mm,
of our environment, and what, as humans, we have done and are still doing to it. So what I ideally like to see, in the science, because most of the science in schools now is combined science. But within within the botany section, there could be more emphasis on the the balance of the ecosystem. And that all of that starts with insects, whether they be pollinating insects or any other type of insect. They're the bottom of the food chain. And
mm.
without those, we're scuppered, basically.
Yeah,
Because
I've always been led to be like, or I've always been taught that if you've got a lot of insects, whether that be in your house, your garden, or wherever, it's a healthy thing. It,
totally,
it shows that the if there's life at that level, it means there's life way above it.
exactly, exactly. So I think, as a community, even as a local community, but certainly as a national community, we should be um, telling particularly youngsters about the importance of our environment. And it's not all about climate change. Obviously, that plays a huge part.
Mm.
And humans have affected the climate, but we also affect what happens in our local community. And we can do I always say that, people say, well, what's it got to do with me? How can I possibly help? Well, if I know, I say to people, even if you haven't got a garden, you've probably got a ledge on a windowsill. If every single household planted up a window box, irrespective of whether you've got a garden or not, that would be an enormous resource countrywide
They
for
used to
all
be
those
everywhere.
insects.
Everybody used to have window boxes. It was sort of the
Yeah.
done thing with like pansies in them or lavender or herbs even.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I think that I wanted to touch with you on this because this is one of my absolute gripes with the modern world. And don't get me wrong, I've been in construction, I've done it, I've built them. But there's across the road from where I live, there's a little bit of a greenery. It's like a little sort of, it's almost like a village green, but we don't live in a village. And recently, because obviously the council budgets end
Mm.
towards April, they just throw a lot of money at pointless stuff just to sort of eat up the budget so that they can get renewed for next year. And there's trees or bushes. There was a holly bush over the road that had been there at least 20 years. at
Don't
least.
tell me.
Oh, you know it, Maureen. They've just absolutely blitzed the lot.
Oh.
So they've cut. There's a dead tree, and Adrian will back me up on this. It's not dead.
No.
Because there's mushrooms that grow on it every year. The ink caps that grow on it, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. Oh, it's dead, just chop it down. And I'm like, no, it's not dead. It's not.
And it provides habitat for insects as well.
Well, it'll be insects, hedgehogs,
Exactly.
the whole 9 yards. And basically, they've just stripped it bare. So there is still trees there, but they've stripped it bare, chipped all the bushes and trees. So there's no coverage for hedgehogs or birds or anything anymore. And it really frustrates me. And what I'm sort of trying to get to is the modern garden, or the modern house now is concrete patio or porcelain tiles, fake grass.
Oh, don't get me on that.
very few flowers or flower beds. They'll have a water feature that is like chlorinated and bloody lit up, and there'll be no pond life in it. And a fountain or whatever, and then like a shed or a garden room at the bottom, and that tends to be these resin patios that people love.
Yeah.
And do you think that that's obviously coming from a garden or like a garden design background? Do you think that's like part of the problem where we see these sort of rest homes or homes that would be for bees and for pollinators, they're becoming more and more scarce?
Yeah.
Nowadays.
I mean, a lot of gardens are actually a desert in terms of insect life and any sort of wildlife. But I think it's indicative of our times in a way, Lewis, because the majority of people who have gardens like that is either through ignorance, in which case, there should be more information out there, or it could be that they would love to have a garden that would support more wildlife, but they just haven't got the time, the work pressures, the pressure of providing for a family nowadays is so great that the last thing people want to do when they get home from work or at the weekend is to set about creating a garden. What they want is a space that they can just sit and relax in.
Minimal.
And totally minimal. No maintenance, no work to be put into it. And I think that's part of where we are as a civilization at the moment. And it's funny, I do go around giving talks and so on to various groups and societies. And it's interesting that, in fact, I gave a talk to a gardening group just on Tuesday evening. Lovely group of people over at Otley. And there were some younger people there, but what I found talking to garden groups is that the vast majority are probably age 50 plus.
When they've got the time.
When they've got the time.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing with the sort of I'm one of my big dreams, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I know for certain Adrian will know this, is I want to retreat from society, Maureen. I don't want to be part. I don't want to be part of it anymore. And I think I want 5 acres of land, have my own sort of ecosystem within that land, whether that be livestock, vegetables, fruits, plants, pollen, and create that sort of connection back with what we should be doing, or what I feel we should be doing as a species. Is this sort of 9 to 5 slog, working for somebody, earning a wage is all well and good, and there's people that do that every day, all day, and my hat's off to them, and they might be happy. But I feel more and more that we're losing so much connection with this planet that we sort of inhabit. It's not our planet. We're living here.
No, we're just stewards of it.
Exactly. And I'm speaking with Gary Yourofsky. He's coming on the podcast end of April. And he's a big vegan activist. He's often credited with, I think it's called The Best Speech You'll Ever Hear. And
Oh,
it's
right.
about veganism and stuff. And I think, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a vegan. I've had Cliff Grant on the podcast. He's a vegan activist. And I find the subject really, really fascinating because I think from somebody that eats meat and somebody that happily and enjoys eating meat, I think we kind of have the same goal, which is to be harmonious with our environment.
Yes.
We and like you mentioned earlier about climate change, I think people get exhausted by it is because we're
Yes.
always in the wrong. We're always bad. You know, if you use
Yeah.
plastic, then you're bad. Well, unfortunately, you can't get away from using plastic because it's
It's
freaking
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's in clothes, it's in bottles, it's in, you know, it's in our water, for God's sake.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think one of the big things that people miss is the fact that, and this is my sort of thing with veganism, is they're trying to sort of go through the world without having an impact, which is impossible.
But whatever you do, it will have an impact.
100%. We're here.
Yeah.
If you are existing and you are alive now, you are having an impact on the planet, regardless.
Yes.
Even if you just stand still for 90 years of your life and not move, you're still going to have an impact on the planet. And I think what a lot of people need to concentrate on is having a positive impact rather than a negative impact on the planet.
Yes.
And that's the thing with climate change, is the fact that, don't get me wrong, I don't believe in the whole global warming and cooling and the scaremongering that goes on with it. But climate will forever change. It forever has and forever will do. Even if we weren't here, it will change. Maybe we
Yes.
accelerate it. Maybe we decelerate it. Maybe we have a big effect or a little effect. But if we can have a positive effect,
Yes.
in some sense, then that's the thing that we need to focus on, rather than sort of, you're evil for driving a diesel car. You're evil for doing this. You're bad for not separating your plastics, your cardboards, and your canned foods. And now we've got a new coloured bin that's for food waste that I won't be using because there's very little waste of food at my
Yeah. I was going to say
house.
that's not going to work in our household because we eat everything.
Yeah. So I think that thing with having a positive impact is so, and you can do that if you've got, like you've just said, if you've got a window, it takes little to no effort or money to set up a window box,
Exactly. Yeah.
and you could have such a positive impact that you won't really see the benefit of.
No.
But
But
like you said, you'll have the impact.
yeah. And I do think there's I don't know who coined the phrase of, think globally, act locally. We can all do that. Even having a window box, if everybody did that, and if everybody, I don't know, had a space to grow some vegetables, we'd be more or less self-sufficient in no time at all. Obviously, some things you can't grow at home, but
Oh, I've done the research. I know you can't grow bananas.
no,
You can't grow mango. Well, you can grow mangoes, but it's very difficult. And
yeah,
cocoa beans, you can, but
yeah,
it's very, very difficult. So
yeah,
I know if and when I get my little small holding and my little dream,
yeah.
I will be still having to buy bananas from
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. But I think that's an interesting point, actually, Lewis. This whole grow your own thing, because we, as a society, certainly in the UK and probably Europe and almost the rest of the world as well, we've gone away from the seasonality of things.
Oh,
And I think
yeah.
the middle of winter, I don't want to eat strawberries in the middle of winter. A, because the ones from the supermarket have been freighted God knows how many miles at whatever cost to the environment, and they taste like, yeah,
They're just
I
not
I
as
can't.
sweet.
I'm better not say what I'm thinking, but you know, give me a UK grown strawberry at the end of June and July. Give me that any day. And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that we're so used now to going to the supermarket and buying whatever we want whenever we want it. And that's one way that I think we can actually get back to our roots, quite
Yeah,
literally. You know, eat more
100%.
seasonal food. Eat food that either you can grow yourself or that is grown in the UK.
Well,
Yes, the amount will be restricted in your choice, but surely it's going to be better for you.
but it's the joy. Like I'm 100% on board with what you say, because I eat a lot of venison,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously that still to an extent is seasonal.
Yes.
And I love it's really disappointing. So when and it's coming towards the end now of that season, and there's very few venison steaks or venison haunches available to buy. It's because it's disappointing. I'm like, oh, I'm like, this is it. It's the end. I've got to wait now until next season. But then when the next season comes around and it gets flooded with venison meat, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we get
Yay.
to eat venison again. Thank God it's back. And
Yeah.
it's that sort of dipping in and dipping out of seasonal vegetables. Like
Yeah.
I was speaking with who was I speaking with? Might have been my mother. Regarding, there's a really good documentary series about blue zones across the planet. And for those that don't know what blue zones are, they are areas within the planet or on the planet of humans that have the most centurions per capita.
Mm.
So I think one's in Sardinia in Italy. One's in Okinawa in Japan. They're the two that I remember the most. And basically, this documentary goes to about 9 of these blue zones, and they're trying to sort of analyze what is it in them areas that help these people live beyond 100 years old. And Italy, it was determined like a lot of it's the Mediterranean diet. There was this guy was 105 years old. He walked 2 miles every morning to go and have breakfast. Still does at 105. Has a glass of red wine with breakfast. And then walks home. So he walks 4 miles a day at 105 years old, has a glass of red wine at 10 a.m. in the morning. And, you know, he's very relaxed. You can tell when he's speaking, he's just not a care in the world. There's no rush, there's no hurry. And obviously that's what they determine in that sense. There's very low cortisol, very sort of healthy diet. And then in Okinawa in Japan, it was all about what they grow in their garden. And it's very communal. And because they don't have chairs, they're basically very strong core strength. So very few people die from falls or anything when they get older, because they've been basically doing floor squats their whole life of getting up and down. And because it's very community driven, and there's that sort of honor system within Japan and respect for community, is when somebody is poorly or ill or sick, the community gathers round, and because of the vegetables and the food that they grow, they cook for them. And they care for one another. And it's a really, I know for a fact that when I was growing up and my nana, it was, what would it be? Yeah, early 90s. You could leave your house wide open, go to work, come back, and it'd be fine and no problem. And everybody cared for one another. Whereas I feel that is massively disappeared from this country, where everybody's worried about somebody else and what are they wanting. And then there's just that lack of community. And like allotments, like you said, you had an allotment, and there's quite a few up near where I walk the dog, and they're disappearing. People, half of them are in disrepair. None of them hardly grow vegetables. There's a few chickens, but then the government have just done roosters on allotments. On allotments, well, which is just like, where, this is what. I'm sorry for laughing, but it's just, where do you expect to find a frigging rooster? Well, on an allotment. That's where they should be. They shouldn't be anywhere else. If it was in a 2 up, 2 down terraced house, I'd be having a conversation. But it's on an allotment where you would expect them to be. And it's that sort of it just sort of almost overemphasizes the sort of lack of connection
Yes.
with nature, or the lack of knowledge with nature, and common sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made me laugh when I found that they banned roosters.
Yeah. Ban roosters. Oh my word. Oh
Oh,
dear.
I
Hey
know.
ho.
That's the state of the world that we're in. Oh God, it's got me crying that again. But so I wanted to sort of get back onto bees, and I've never been lucky enough to be close proximity to a big hive. Now, we had ones in bird boxes, which are obviously tiny.
Yeah.
There wasn't that many. Although I did find out with having bumblebees that the bumblebee queen at the end of the
Yeah.
year, I never knew this, she
Yeah.
digs and buries
Yeah.
into the ground
Yeah. And hibernates over
and
winter.
hibernates over winter, which is like,
Yeah.
I never, I bet there's a lot of people listening now that wouldn't have had a clue that that's
Yeah.
what a bumblebee queen does at the end of the year.
Yeah. And what's interesting actually, it's that people do think of bees, honeybees, bumblebees, and it's interesting that the honeybee is the only bee, the only species that actually forms a colony that overwinters with the same queen.
Right,
So a honeybee queen can live for 3, 4, 5 years, possibly, in the same hive. And that's why bees make honey, to keep the colony and the queen alive over winter. That's the
right.
only reason they make honey, is to feed themselves. So,
So it's
the
almost
bee
like a squirrel storing nuts.
storing nuts,
Got
exactly.
you.
So that honeybees make honey, and they're the only ones that actually live in such a large colony over winter. Um, and they're social bees. Now, bumblebees are social bees as well, but they have much, much smaller colonies. And it's only the queen from the previous year. And as you say, she will find a hole somewhere, hibernate over winter. She then forms like a mini colony, if you will, couple of hundred, no more. And at the end of the season, the bees that then emerge are new queen bumblebees, because the queen that laid all the eggs during that season will die, along with
Right,
all the worker bees. So it's the newly laid, the newly hatched queen bumblebees that will fly out of the nest, mate, and then hibernate. So a queen bumblebee will only live for a year, from
right.
the autumn to the next autumn. So that in itself is interesting,
Mm,
because we divide bees into social bees and solitary bees. So the social bees are honeybees for that
hmm.
very reason. They create a huge social network, and bumblebees that create smaller colonies. But what people tend to forget about is all the solitary bees. And there's far more species of solitary bees than there are of bumblebees. And, honeybees, there's one species, full stop.
Mm.
With bumblebees, there are several species. With solitary
Yeah,
bees,
there's
there
like
are
red.
hundreds of species.
Me and my partner went to the Natural History Museum in London recently. Well, I say,
Oh, I love it there.
was it last? Yeah, it was last year. We went to Wimbledon. So we went to
Mm,
Wimbledon, and it was, if you remember, it was absolutely sweltering. I've never been
yeah,
as hot in my life.
yeah.
And we were on centre court for the women's semi-final,
Oh,
and
gosh.
I couldn't breathe. I sweat
Oh,
sat down. I am
oh,
generally a hot person. I'm kidding you not. It was at least 45 to 50 degrees in that
oh, I
stadium at the
couldn't
back.
cope with that. Oh,
I
goodness.
was like stripping off and like I'm going shirtless. Hope the cameras don't see me. But so we had an extra day in London. And I thought, let's go to the Natural History Museum. I've been to the one in New York where I used to live. I've not been to the one in my home country. And there's a part in the Natural History Museum where it has like it starts with the bumblebee and honeybee, and then it expands, and it's almost like a mural that goes up the wall and onto the
Yeah.
ceiling of all the different types of bees. And I knew there was more than bumblebees and honeybees, but I didn't realize there was
Yeah,
that many.
just how many?
It was ridiculous, the amount, and then all the different colours of like red-footed bees,
Yes, yeah,
and like you've got the bumblebees which are red and yellow and orange and white,
yeah.
and you just I didn't realise there was that many, and that
Yeah,
different
it's
sort of
hundreds.
sizes and colours and stuff. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so what I think the sort of fascinating thing for me is, and we'll get onto it. We'll get onto it now because we've mentioned it a few times. The honey element.
yeah,
It's the only animal or insect that ever we've known to produce this substance. Do
yeah.
we actually do we know yet how they do it? From my last research, we still don't know how they do it.
Well, there's honey is an again. I used to give some talks to youngsters in schools, especially primary school. They love this bit because bees collect nectar from flowers, and that's the only reason flowers produce nectar is to attract pollinating insects. Because when the let's just stick to honeybees. When a honeybee visits a flower to collect the nectar, and honeybees also collect pollen, not all insects do, not all bees do, to collect pollen. The pollination bit of it is actually a byproduct, if you will, because honeybees, don't visit a flower and think to themselves, oh, I need to transfer this pollen from one flower to another. No, all they're going to a flower for is for food.
Mm,
Nectar, which is provides their carbohydrate, because all nectar is sugar, but it's glucose, sucrose, fructose in varying amounts depending on what the flour is. So that's their carbohydrate. And if I just mention as well, honeybees will collect pollen and they make what is called bee bread from that. And the pollen is their protein. So,
right.
I'm quite happy to, tuck into a steak or a piece of chicken. Vegans will rely on pulses and so on. But for bees, the pollen is their protein.
Right.
And they're the only two things that they feed on. That's their whole nutrition, apart from water. And of course,
Mm,
every living creature needs
yeah.
water. So the nectar that they collect, they take back to the hive. And while they're flying back to the hive, they swallow and regurgitate the nectar, and swallow and regurgitate and swallow and regurgitate. And each time they swallow and regurgitate, particular enzymes are secreted into the nectar from what's called the hypopharyngeal gland. Get me?
Oh, nice. I like that.
That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that, in effect, turns the nectar into honey. So when the hive, the worker bee, and they're all females, don't forget, Lewis, the worker bees are all females.
Yeah.
When she gets back to the hive, she regurgitates it into another bee, as it were. They transfer the regurgitated nectar, and that bee in the hive will carry on regurgitating and swallowing until that nectar has been transformed into honey.
So basically, honey is bee vomit.
Yeah, it's bee sick. And
I
that's
love
what
it.
that's what the kids at primary school love. And they go home and tell, yeah, hey, guess what honey is, Mum? It's bee sick. So so that's when they deposit it in the cells, as everybody knows about honeycomb, and that's where they deposit it. And then what they have to do is to reduce the amount of water that's in the honey to about 17, no more than 17%. So they'll do that by fanning and also keep on regurgitating until the water content is less than 17%. If it's more than that, the honey will start fermenting in the hive. And that's one of the reasons why honey never goes off.
Which is, it's so fascinating.
Yeah,
It's just,
honey will never
I
ever.
know that. Yeah,
Will never ever go off.
they found it in Egypt, haven't they?
Yeah, in Tutankhamun's tomb.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, nobody actually tried it, but they did scientifically test it, and they said it's
I would have.
perfectly edible.
I would have
Perfectly
tried it
edible. I would have done
100%.
as well. Yeah.
I'd have been straight for it. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, the fact that then they, in each individual little cell, there's a certain amount of honey, and that's what the bees feed on over winter. So this sort of takes me on to being a responsible beekeeper, because any beekeeper worth their salt will never take all the honey off a hive. They will always leave enough honey on the hive to keep the bees going over winter. And that's unfortunately where some unscrupulous commercial beekeepers, or bee farmers, I should say, they're not particularly keepers, they're farmers. That's a bit controversial. I hope there's no bee farmers listening in on this. But some will take more honey than they ought to, and then they substitute fondant or sugar syrup to keep the bees alive over winter.
Which surely, yeah, and thinking about this, so if you look at the process of making honey, it's all natural. There's no sort of human intervention.
None at all.
If you are then surplusing that with fructose and sugar water or whatever that may be, then that's where the human intervention comes from, which surely will affect the honey.
It will. It's bound to. And also, really interesting little factoid here that I'll let you guess, actually, Lewis. How much honey do you think one worker honeybee makes in its lifetime?
Oh,
Have a guess.
I'm going to go for half a litre.
1/12 of a teaspoon.
Oh, damn. I was way off.
One
wow.
worker honeybee will make 1/12 of a teaspoon in its lifetime.
Jeez. So if you go to a supermarket and you see
the
actual honey, because I know a lot of it isn't actual honey.
We can come on to that in a minute.
Yeah. But that's
1/12
a lot.
I know.
You look at like planet wide, that's billions and billions of bees.
Exactly. So that's why during the summer months you can have up to 100,000 bees in a single hive, because to make enough honey to keep that colony alive over winter, which reduces it, there's not that number over winter, it reduces by several thousand. But even so, they've got to make a hell of a lot of honey over the summer months in order to keep themselves alive over winter.
Wow. I've always found, and that's the thing, I found it fascinating where you get different honeys.
Yes.
I've had different honeys. Like I've had Manuka honey, and I've also had lavender honey, and the taste that comes through the honey is astounding. And there's honeys I don't like.
Some are absolutely disgusting.
Dreadful. They are dreadful, and you just think, God, no, I don't want that again. But it's like it's really interesting that ultimately, it is, and this is the sort of the problem that I see with, and I know I've touched on it with veganism and being in touch with your, or in harmony with your food chain, is the fact that as humans, and I don't think it's necessarily humans, maybe some humans, but society, it's always like that commercialization, and let's make as much as we can, as fast as we can, to make as much money as we can, without any thought process of like, should we
be doing this?
Yeah, ultimately. And like you look at, I see it, you look at the steaks and the meat and all the food that gets wasted on a daily basis in supermarkets. And it frustrates me when I have to throw something away because I haven't used it in time and it's gone moldy or whatever. And don't get me wrong, sort of composting comes in handy for that, because it's not fully wasted, even though it kind of is. But that frustration for me from a personal level in my own household, like globally, the amount of food that gets wasted is ridiculous.
It's astonishing.
And then this is a product that's made by bees that can't go off.
Yeah.
And we still manage to sort of exploit it and bastardize it to a point where it becomes something else.
And I think that's a really good point, Lewis, because research has shown, and in fact, there's been widespread testing over the recent years about with different makes of honey, shall we say, and a good number, I don't know the percentage, but a good number of them have been adulterated with sugar syrup.
Yeah.
So they're not even pure honey.
And then they get mixed as well. I always look for a single source honey.
Absolutely. And I think that's important, when people do go to the supermarket or, farm shop or wherever, I always advocate buying as local as you can, not only because, for hay fever and allergy reasons, but also to help the local beekeeper.
Yes.
Who is, some rely on that income, to keep the household going. But also with a lot of imported honey, and I think it's important, if you do buy honey from a supermarket, look really, really carefully at the label. Where does it come from? If it says product of EU and non-EU countries, I'm going to say something very controversial now.
Say it.
I can pretty well guarantee that the non-EU country bit is from China. And the reason that is not such a good thing is that whether it's true or not, I haven't been able to find out specifically whether this is true, but hearsay has it that a number of apiaries in China, the bees are fed solely on sugar syrup, a bit like factory farming, if you will. And so the bees are, consuming this sugar syrup in order to make the honey. That is no way to keep bees.
Well, it's not.
It's like factory farming.
Yeah, it's not natural again.
It's like, not natural.
It's like veal. I have tried veal, I think twice, and I think the second time I tried it because I thought, maybe I just had a bad experience the first time, and it's not a nice meat.
No,
I don't care who you are. Anybody that likes veal is almost sadistic to an extent. And you can come for me all you want on that. But that it's not I'd much. There's a butcher that obviously is out of business now. He stopped, and that's part and parcel where he can't compete with supermarkets.
Yes, yeah.
But he only ever used to butcher heifers, and it was because they made the best meat. They were the tastiest. They were the best marbled. They were all grass fed, free range, no sort of, and he always paid a premium for that. Whereas now I can imagine, and I've seen, it's just any old knacker will do, and we'll butcher it up, and we'll just give you whatever. But I guarantee, what? Who is it? Is it well? I know other supermarkets are available, but it's Sainsbury's or Tesco's where it's like taste the difference. Oh, it's M&S, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they've all jumped on the bandwagon, haven't they, with that one?
But you can taste the difference. You can taste the difference when something's sort of properly sourced, naturally bred. My next door neighbor, or my mother's next door neighbor, used to have chickens. They don't, unfortunately, anymore. Obviously, the eggs weren't Red Lion stamped or anything along those lines, and they used to feed the chickens kitchen scraps. But they were the best tasting eggs you could ever. The most golden yolks, and they were absolutely delicious. And this is it's just because there was no interference. They're not fed on like chicken feed. They're just fed food.
What they would be foraging for, were they in a wild environment, basically?
And I think that's the same with sort of, it's got to be the same with honey. If you fed sort of
Yeah,
fructose and sugar water and syrup and stuff, then rather than nectar, nectar
yeah,
from plants and
yeah.
from lavender, it's going to taste just like sweet syrup.
Exactly. You might as well just pour golden syrup on your toast, and golden syrup's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the thing. And actually, it's interesting you're saying about the different types of honey as well that you can get, because the
Mm,
majority of honey will be classed as either wildflower or blossom, something like that. And again, it has to be labelled according to the trading standards. When you mentioned lavender honey, you can get
mm.
lavender honey, heather honey, or single species honey. And what's interesting, I always find this fascinating, is that to be labelled as a single flower honey, 85% of the honey in that jar has to come from that particular flower.
Right.
And you think, well, how the dickens can they know
I'm
that?
I'm thinking this.
Yeah. The interesting bit is that all honey contains microscopic particles of the pollen of
Oh
the plant
wow.
that the bees have been feeding on that we can't see, but you can see under a microscope. And each pollen footprint, as it were, is different. So
That's fascinating.
as you can analyze individual honeys and find out the pollen content of that honey and therefore determine what the bees have been feeding on. And
That's
if
amazing.
it's 85% or more of one particular plant species, that's when it can be designated lavender, heather, acacia, whatever.
That's
So I
brilliant.
find that fascinating.
It's such a strange thing. Like one of the things that, and I know you might not listen to Maureen, but I listen to Joe Rogan, or have listened to Joe Rogan quite a lot. I haven't recently. Have had my head buried in a project recently, which is due to launch in a couple of weeks. But one thing that has appeared a couple of times on his show is this thing called Mad Honey, and I know
Yes.
me and
Yeah, yeah.
Adrian have spoke about this because
Yeah.
obviously, you know, I've spoke with Adrian a lot about the sort of the psychedelic compounds within mushrooms,
Mm,
and then
mm.
we touched on this Mad Honey,
Yeah.
which is, for those that don't know, uh, from my understanding, it
Yeah.
is bees in South America, I think, that um, feed on some sort of plant that creates a psychoactive compound within the honey that they produce,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
which
it's
is crazy.
it is. I mean, you can also get mad honey from Turkey.
Right,
And yeah, and it's actually the plant that they're feeding on is Rhododendron ponticum,
right.
and that's it. It's the nectar that that particular species um, produces that causes that to happen. Yeah.
Which it it's just it is so. Are we saying that these bees that feed on this are basically tripping all the time?
No.
No.
No, they're not actually. It doesn't affect the bees. It affects the honey that then affects us. So it doesn't actually affect the bees at all, but it affects we humans who eat the honey.
And that process is just phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it is just amazing, and so like with I can't wrap my head around it. It almost leaves me speechless to the point where we can kind of explain with you know, when we've got cow's milk,
Yeah.
this is why it happens, this is what it does, and so on and so forth. But that whole sort of process with honey
Mm.
is just, and milk goes off.
Yeah, 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 but honey,
Milk will
but honey
spoil,
doesn't. Yeah,
which is just it's marvelous. You know, it is very very. Um, it's it's worrying for me because ultimately, I know at the minute there's is there a problem with like hives dying globally without any explanation? If I believe in what I'm reading,
Yeah.
There's certain hives that are just dying off pretty instantaneously,
Yeah.
and experts like yourself and other people can't really fathom or
We
figure out
don't really
why.
know. No. It's called colony collapse disorder, and it's been
Right.
going on for years, actually. And I don't think, from what I've been reading and the research I've done, there is no one single cause. I think it's when a number of factors coincide, and
Mm,
yet we still don't know what those factors are. Some of it is to do with local weather conditions. Some of it is to do with the plants that the bees are feeding on. So actually, that's an interesting point. I'll just interpose with that.
mm.
Is that it's happening more so with commercial beekeepers,
Right.
particularly in
Okay.
America. And one of the reasons, although it's not the sole reason, is that particularly in America, commercial beekeepers have literally hundreds of hives that
Mm.
they move from one side of the country to another to coincide with the flowering of particular species.
Um,
So the bees will at any one time be feeding on one particular type of flower. So, for example, almonds.
mm,
Um, the beekeepers will put them in almond plantations, because obviously almond is a nut. It's the product of pollination, so you need something to pollinate the flower.
hmm.
So I always think, that can't be that good for the bees, because I
No.
imagine, as a human, you imagine if you were fed fish and chips, as much as I love fish and chips, but every single day for about 2 months, and that's all you were given.
Mm.
It can't be good for you. You'd be
No.
malnourished. I mean,
Well,
you'd stay alive, but you'd be
yeah, yeah.
malnourished.
It
And that's
reminds
got
me
to be the same with bees.
I spoke. Who did I speak with this about? Oh, I spoke with Cliff about this in terms of so the famous. This is one of my very little known facts when it comes to sort of food and stuff. That I really really enjoy this fact is so the famous sort of potato famine that happened in Ireland,
Hmm. Hmm.
and everybody jokes about it nowadays. It wasn't actually that bad of a famine, as people make out, that all they had to eat was potatoes. They were
No, it
actually there was
wasn't.
a lot of rabbits,
Yeah.
and they were eating rabbit a lot. But because rabbit is such a lean meat, they weren't
Mm.
getting the nutrients enough that they needed, whether that be fats or carbohydrates, because of the makeup of the rabbit meat. So they
Yeah.
needed to supplement it with potatoes to actually get the nutrients that they need. So I think, like you said, in terms of eating just one
Yeah.
food and one meal, um, and then all of a sudden, no, you're not eating that anymore. You're eating this. Well, it would be a shock to the system. Some people might
Yeah.
go, well, I'm not eating that, and then die of
Exactly.
starvation.
Yeah. It's a choice you make, and with the bees, that has it's not the sole cause,
No,
but
of
it has to be a contributory
course.
factor in my mind.
Well, it's
Um,
humans just manufacturing and meddling again.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just like there's a program. I think it was on Netflix when I watched it. I haven't watched TV for a while, but it was called the Biggest Little Farm, or the Little Biggest Farm, whichever whichever
Yeah.
way around that was. But it was really interesting. It was I recommend anybody to go and watch it. It was really really fascinating. So it was a couple that lived in a city. I think it was Chicago at the time, and they decided that for their dog, who, because they were getting threatened with being kicked out of the apartment, for their dog, they wanted
Oh,
to buy a farm, and they crowdfunded it. A lot of their friends helped them with finances and so on and so forth, and donated. And they basically bought this land in California, this failed farm that was an absolute wreck, and nobody could make it work. And basically, this documentary follows their journey of how they restored this farm beyond what they could ever imagine. But one of the big things that I really, and this was almost the birthplace. I kind of wanted to do it before, but this was the birthplace of the reality of my dream of having my own land. Is they found certain synchronicities within the farming element that were surprising. They didn't expect to. So one of the big things they, especially in California, when they had, they didn't have many cows, but when they had the cows in the pasture, and obviously you've got the, as we call up in the north, the cow pats
Yeah.
everywhere, and they had a real problem with flies.
Yes.
And then they were thinking, how do we solve this problem? So what they started to do was release the chickens out with the cows together.
Yeah.
So that when the maggots were in the cow pats, the chickens would eat the maggots. Yeah. And there you go. Ipso
Bob's your
facto.
uncle.
Yep. The chickens get fed and you've solved your fly problem. And then they were having a problem with snails in their apple orchard. So they released the ducks in the apple orchard, and the ducks eat the snails because it's one of their favorite fruits. And then when the ducks defecate, it fertilizes the plants for the apples to grow. So they were finding these relationships, or rediscovering these relationships that would be there in the wild.
Yeah,
and
they've always been there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And their surprise was, why aren't other farmers and other agricultural, why aren't they doing stuff like this and rediscovering these relationships that are natural to have? And I think with stuff like that, bees on a farm, any farm, are a necessity.
Yes.
On pollinators in general, butterflies. Who wouldn't want butterflies that are absolutely beautiful, sort of flappy, dancy, sort of peacock.
They're magical, aren't they?
They are unbelievable. Like, they're another thing that I could watch for hours. They're so, there's nothing better than walking through sort of a long grass meadow or field, and all the yellow butterflies are dancing in summer. It's beautiful. And I think they are the natural the natural habitat. Farms are the natural habitat for these creatures. 100%. And they're only ever going to help. I can't. I know you might put me wrong, but there's no hindrance to having them round.
No.
Very little.
It's total benefit. There is nothing that is anti about them at all.
No.
Nothing at all.
And I think, like, I teach my daughter, whenever we see bees out, and you see them in summer where they're exhausted and they're on the ground, we just get a little bit of spoon, a little bit of sugar, hot water, mix it all in, and then give them a drink, and off they pop.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of education, people get frightened of them.
Yes.
Because obviously they can sting, or some can sting. But then understanding they're not a wasp.
Yeah. Bees, people have to remember that bees certainly will only ever sting in defense. They don't go out and think, oh, let's find a human, let's go and sting them. It's only when we interfere with what they're doing that they will try and defend themselves. And rightly so, I mean, I've been stung many times when I was beekeeping, but and I always say to people, well, you imagine, you're going about your business, and suddenly someone comes along, rips the roof of your house off and starts meddling with your bits inside. That's what beekeepers do. They come along, take the roof off, and take out the frames and have a look. Of course, the bees are going to be angry. They're thinking, hang on a minute, we're being attacked here. So, of course, they're going to try and sting. Of course they are.
I think there's I can't remember. They'll have to forgive me. I maybe tag them in this video if I can find them. But there was he's basically doing this in America. He has a small holding, but a lot of it he does bees and birds, basically. Does a lot of like exotic chicken and duck breeds. But then does bees, and he was saying, like, it's really interesting when he does it, because he'll start a hive, and then sometimes the hive will become hyper aggressive.
Yes.
And it'll become hyper aggressive to the other hives.
Yeah.
As well as to obviously the humans. And what he has to do sometimes is remove the queen
Yeah,
and
replace the
change
queen.
replace the queen, and the
Yeah,
hive just calms right down, and it's
yeah,
really, really surreal
yeah.
how he explains it. But and this brings me on to the point of the sort of hive mentality,
Mm.
and the sort of drone element. Does do we understand yet of why it seems to be that the queen dictates behavior of the hive and the efficiency of the hive? Is there some sort of what? Because obviously I don't know whether anybody listening's aware. There's the sort of, I know bees communicate by waggling their
Mm.
abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other sort of communication
Yeah.
type that we've found or that
It,
you've observed?
it's what research has shown. It's all down to pheromones and the
Right.
pheromones that the queen gives off. And if you've got I call them feisty queens. I had one in a hive that I had, and I thought, I this isn't working. So
Mm,
actually I found the queen and I had to replace her, because the pheromones that she was giving off were such that it made the rest of the hive, all the workers, very, very aggressive. And
right.
it's also you'll see hives placed side by side as well
Hmm.
in an apiary. And people say, well, how does the bee know which hive to go to? It's all to do with the pheromones that the queen has given off, because the hive will be saturated with her pheromones. And each queen produces a slightly different pheromone than their next queen. And that's how bees know. And if a bee lands at a hive that isn't their hive, then the sort of the guardians, the bee guardians that guard the entrance to the hive, will detect that actually this one isn't one of ours, and they will shoo it away. They will,
Wow.
just say, in effect, you're at the
You're in
wrong
the wrong
place, mate. Yeah,
place.
go away. That you don't belong here. So it's all down to pheromones.
Which is ants are similar, if I remember
Yes.
rightly. Ants are similar, where
Yeah.
I've seen the experiment where they leave the pheromone trail, which is why
Yes.
ants all go in a line.
That's exactly so.
And
Exactly so.
if you break that sort of pheromone trail with whatever, a cloth or whatever, the ants kind of go, "All right, where
Hang
do
on
I
a
go
minute.
now?"
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to panic, but I don't know
Yeah,
where
yeah.
I am.
Which, which is it's fascinating, and I suppose that's what sort of makes it that super organism, because ultimately it
Yes,
comes down to that one queen.
comes down to the queen. Yeah,
Wow.
it's all down to the queen.
So that, and then so with the waggle dance, or the,
Yeah, that's fascinating.
which I've never seen in real life. I've seen obviously on videos and stuff. I'd love to observe in real life, but what's that sort of communication then? Because if everything's sort of through pheromones within the hive,
Hmm.
which we can't see and we can't detect, but we can see this waggle
Yeah,
dance when it happens, and the pulses and the patterns that they make
yeah.
when they're on. I mean, I'll put a video attached to this, because anybody that hasn't seen it needs to view it.
It's
It is
remarkable.
mesmerizing. Uh, that obvious Thinking about it now, that obviously comes from the queen, because the queen will tell them what to do, in
Yeah.
essence.
Well, in effect, the worker bees have this innate ability to do the waggle dance. And the waggle dance is down to, so imagine you've got a worker bee. She flies out of the hive and she's looking for food,
Mm,
basically. She's looking for new sources of food, nectar and pollen. She finds a really, really good source that she thinks is a really good source of food. And so she'll fly back to the hive, and that's when the waggle dance takes place, because she has to persuade the other worker bees in the hive to go and visit where she's just been, because there's a good food source. That's where the waggle dance comes in. So it's a figure of eight, basically. So if you imagine just on the vertical, that the honeybee will advance vertically and
mm.
waggling her bum at the same time. Now, how vigorously she waggles her bum will indicate how good the source is.
Wow.
How good. And how far she travels on her vertical bit of the waggle dance indicates how far away from the hive that food source is. And
How
then
do people figure this out? This
I
is
know.
unbelievable.
It is. And then she'll get to the top of her waggle dance and then she'll loop round to the right and then she'll do her dance again and then she'll loop round to the left and then do her dance again. The interesting point is that they've worked out, research has shown that the angle of her waggle dance, we've said it's vertical, it could be at a different angle. The angle in the hive to the vertical of her waggle dance indicates the direction from the hive that the bees should go in relation to the sun.
This is just bonkers.
It is.
It
How
is.
the dickens do those creatures, how has that information been passed to them that information is necessary in that waggle dance to persuade the other worker bees in the hive that that is the best source of food? And what's really interesting as well, Lewis, is that you may get two worker bees doing a waggle dance at the same time.
For different sources.
For different sources. And so the worker bees have to detect from the two waggle dances which is going to be the best source. And that's where the vigorousness, if is that a word, it is now.
Yeah, it is. We've made it.
Yeah, of her bum wiggle, basically. That the faster and the more intense her bum wiggle is, that will persuade them that that is the best source of food.
It's so
How the dickens do they know that?
It's just so. You know what? It's fascinating when you've got. When you've got 35-year-old humans that still can't find their way out of their hometown of where they live because they don't know directions. But then you've got these bees that live less than a year, giving precise locations that don't have complex, well, to our knowledge, complex language in terms of spoken language.
But they're still able to communicate. And those worker bees, if they decide, yeah, we're going to follow that, they reach there within centimetres. I mean, talk about inbuilt sat nav.
It is phenomenal.
It's incredible.
And it's, for me, it's something like when you've explained that. I'm going to research that tonight. Thank you, Maureen. You've probably kept me up till 1, 2 a.m. now because I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. Adrian's usually the cause of my rabbit hole descent into the fact that the last when I had him on last, he introduced me to Otzi the Iceman. Otzi the Iceman is a person that they found in a glacier. That had melted, that was over 10,000 years old, and in his little pack, they found birch polypore mushroom. What was the other one? Cordyceps, I think it was, which was basically in medicinal quantities.
Wow.
Now, that was me for the next at least 2 weeks, just researching that. How did they know it was medicinal? How did they know that what mushroom it was? It's over 10,000 years old. Why did they know it was this? What's evolved in this? And going down. So you've now caused, probably a couple of weeks worth of sort of research trips. And I don't understand. I can't comprehend and I can't get into the mindset of anybody that doesn't hear this information and listen to this podcast and think, wow, I want to know more. Why does it do that? Why? I want to observe this in real time and real life. And I think what a lot of people see and a lot of people do day to day, and you've touched on this when you mentioned about people being busy all the time, and the way society's set up to keep us busy. I spoke with a gentleman called Chris Hanna recently, who I think his episode's out already, and he was mentioning about the way governments keep sort of people controlled is to keep them
Mm.
working to exhaustion, so the point where that they're not working, they're too tired to argue.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at things like this and you can observe the bees, they're so integral and so important, so fascinating, that they deserve time. They deserve people to take the time. You know, like, I mean, well, everybody's got an afternoon free, 2-3 hours, if that. You've got an hour to go to the shops to buy some compost and some plants, and 2 hours is more than enough to set up a window box or set up some sort of planter. And if everybody in the country, that's 80 million, well, what it would be, 40 million households,
Yeah.
did that, imagine the impact that would have.
Exactly. Yeah.
It would be tantamount to what I just
Would be
restore.
acres and acres.
Oh, it'd be
Literally.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think that the death of sort of the rockery or the sort of flower bed and the garden and the good life. I've mentioned this before. That was, I remember growing up watching that
Yes.
the
Yeah.
program, and I remember thinking, "What? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I want."
Yeah.
Let my little own patch of my own king. Every man's house is his castle.
Yeah.
That's your kingdom. That's where you rule and you make sure everybody's okay. If everybody sort of took a leaf out of that, but rather than sort of paving over and making everything plastic,
Yeah. Actually, what's
go a long
interesting,
way.
Lewis, when I was doing research for my latest book, is that it turns out that the average garden in England and Wales, not Scotland, and excluding London, but the average size of garden in England and Wales is actually 188 square metres,
Wow, that's big.
which is, it's not huge, but it's big enough for the average garden to have flowers, plants for pollinating insects. So, even new build estates, for example, yes, their gardens aren't huge, but they're big enough. So even if you don't want to plant the whole of your garden with plants for pollinating insects, you can plant a little bit of it. And a little bit takes no time at all out of the week. It really doesn't. So, to my mind, there's no excuse. Nearly everybody, obviously it's a generalization, but nearly everybody has got room to do that. It's just lacking the desire to do it. And I
Do you
think if
think?
more people realize the benefit from it, not only for the pollinating insects, and I think this is a really valid point as well, Lewis, is for their own well-being. Because
Yes.
again, research has shown that if you get out into the countryside, into your garden, and I love this term, get down dirty. Yeah, in your garden, it really does aid your well-being. Over COVID, the number of people who took up gardening and they
It's
found that it actually helped their mental
so.
well-being.
I've had a gentleman on the podcast called Dean Hall, and Dean Hall is living proof of this fact of how nature can heal.
Mm,
So Dean had chronic CLL, chronic lymphatic leukemia,
my word.
and he had lymphoma as well
Yeah.
at the time, and he just previously lost. I'm going to kind of give too much of his story away, but
No.
he lost his wife the year previous to cancer, and for his daughter, he wanted to prove to his daughter that he wasn't going to die, basically. So he decided to take up a childhood dream of swimming the Willamette River,
Mm,
which is 184 miles in
good grief.
near freezing water. And his doctor, obviously, with his leukemia, strongly advised him against it
Yeah,
and said,
yes, not a
"This is
good
going to
idea.
kill you." Lo and behold, I think it was 18 days in total he spent in the water,
Mm,
and got out, got tests, and no trace of leukemia whatsoever.
good grief.
Although his lymphoma got pretty bad. 1 year later, he tried the ancient Japanese art of Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing for you and me.
Ah, yeah.
And he did it every day for a couple of hours every day. And within a year, no lymphoma.
Mm,
This
mm.
is, if that to me, and don't get me wrong, I don't think it would work for every single person on the
No,
planet. And this is
obviously.
not sort of me saying sack off chemotherapy or anything. But that to me is proof that the natural world has healing properties that we don't quite grasp or understand
Yeah, I agree.
still. And I think I know for a fact whenever I go out, I walk the dog in the morning, or whether I go out for a walk of a weekend, I feel so much better of just being out in the woods. You know, if
Yes.
you walk through
Yeah.
the woods, it's such a good feeling when you
Oh,
come out
it's
of it.
amazing. Yeah.
And I think that is a very, very important thing that people need to sort of rekindle their relationship with.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it starts in the garden, it starts in the garden.
It's what better place to start,
You don't have
really?
to leave your house.
Yeah, exactly. All you got to do is open your back door or your front door or whatever door you use to get out into your garden. And I do believe that your physical well-being is tied in much more closely than people give credit for to your mental well-being.
Oh, yeah.
I'm convinced of it. If you have a positive mental attitude towards whatever physical either disability or condition, and I can speak from experience with this,
Hmm.
Lewis, as you know, because I'm happy to say I'm now in remission
Which is amazing.
from cancer,
I was so
which is brilliant.
You'd been
Um,
on my mind all through Christmas and New Year, and then when I
Bless you.
finally got back to sort of, back to normality, and thought, "Oh, I need to email," I
Yeah,
was so trepidatious.
yeah.
And then when you came back there, I was so happy. So
But
yeah, it was a little celebration.
yeah, but I'm convinced because um, I, I'm I'm I've always been a half full person. You know,
Mm,
glass is half full, not half empty. And I do believe that a positive mental attitude towards whatever adversity you may be facing can only be of benefit. It's not going to do you any harm. Whereas
hmm.
I think if you're yeah, again, this is a generalization. It can't work for everybody. But if you're forever doom mongering, oh, woe is me, what is going to become of me? It's bound to affect how you how you face
Hmm.
whatever it is that you're having to face.
I think
Um,
I,
in,
I think we've all probably seen it in real time. If we actually take a minute, or those of a certain age, obviously maybe over 30, we'll have all seen it with different relations or friends or people that we know of. I certainly have. I've had, so Carl, who was the first ever guest on the podcast, he had a stroke, and traumatic brain injury, and
mm,
he's now running ultra marathons.
wow.
Yeah, it's like, don't get me wrong. I think he's stupid for doing it, because I don't even run for the bus. Never
No,
mind.
likewise. I
Uh,
go for a walk, but you won't find me running anyway.
Yeah, I put me on a football pitch or a hockey pitch, I
All
will
right, yeah,
run for days.
yeah.
But put me on a road, I'd be like, yeah, I'm done in
No.
5. I can't be bothered. But he kind of came from the school of, look, this has happened, but I'm not going to let it beat me, and I'm going to overcome this, and found something to sort of drive him to this success that he's had. I think, is it this? It will be this year. He's running the Welsh Coastal Path, which is like 800 miles over a week. He's trying to go for the fastest known time, which is just for now. I said I'll come and cheer him on, but at the
Yeah.
finish line, no,
Wow.
I won't be going with him. But then I've had a friend who had a stroke, and don't get me wrong, this is still a bad affliction, but he went down the route of, why has this happened to me? Why is it, I was healthy. Why is it always, why is it, always me? And he's never recovered. And
Yeah.
he's only ever gotten worse.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of mentality does make, clearly I've seen evidence of it. It makes such a huge difference.
It does,
And if nature
undoubtedly.
plays a part in that,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
everybody needs to be, go to your GP and get prescribed 20 minutes outside.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, that's interesting because some GPs are actually prescribing that now, aren't they?
I don't know. They should. I
Yeah.
I haven't been able to see a GP for
Yeah.
about
Oh,
8
yeah.
years.
It's only what I've read.
Yeah.
But in some parts of the country, GPs are actually prescribing. You join a community garden scheme or something like that. And it is true. Being outdoors does help with not just mental health, but as you say, physical health as well.
Yeah.
Gardening, it's a physical activity. If you don't
It's
feel
not
like going
easy
for a
work.
walk, do a bit of gardening. It's one of the best exercises, that you can actually do, and you're getting a benefit from it as well.
So if people, we're talking about people getting outside, and if people have listened to this podcast and they're sort of thinking, I'm intrigued, I'm interested. How do they because I was lucky. I didn't set out to keep bees. I didn't set out to have any bees in my garden. I didn't plant lavender because I knew bees liked it. I planted it because I like it. I like the smell of it. And I put the bird boxes up, funnily
Yeah,
enough, for birds.
for the birds, naturally.
And I was so lucky to have 2 hives in the garden of 2 different species of bee. How do people go about starting in this hobby or in this sort of atmosphere? How in this environment?
Yeah.
How do they go about it?
Well, I think in the garden, as with everything, start small. Don't try and create a wildlife garden overnight because it's not going to happen. Do what you can within your own limitations, not only with the amount of time you've got, but with whatever money you can afford. Um, so I think that's the key: is start small and do your research. If you want to attract pollinating insects into your garden, find out what are the best plants. Find out what conditions those plants need, because it all comes back to the soil that you've got. With gardening, the soil and also the aspect. So find out if you want to plant, say, a lavender, you'll need to know that lavender needs very, very free draining soil and it needs to be grown in full sun. So if you've got a north facing garden and your soil is clay, you haven't got a hope of growing any half decent lavender. In fact, they'll turn up the toes overnight and give up the ghost. So do some research, find out what conditions you've got in your garden, which way is it facing, how much sun does it get, and then there's loads of information online. And unashamed plug for my latest book. This is about plants for pollinators, a gardener's guide. So there are resources out there. So start small. If you haven't got a garden, do what we said. Plant up a window box because there you can tailor the soil to whatever plant you want to grow. And if you haven't even got that, get out into a park. If you live in a town, there's bound to be a park. If not in the centre of the town or city, then close by. We're really fortunate in this country that we're not that far away from the countryside wherever we live. It's a bus ride away.
It's always been my when people talk to me about the country being overpopulated, I regularly turn around and say, "Shut up! You're absolutely talking absolute nonsense." So anywhere you look, out, sort of 40 minutes outside of any city or town, you will see miles and miles and miles and miles of just fields and woods and countryside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Exactly.
overpopulated.
It
I mean,
is,
we're lucky
yeah.
where we live because you're never more than 5 minutes away,
Yeah,
really.
exactly. And all
Um,
those fields and the woodlands and so on, they're crisscrossed with public footpaths.
yeah,
You know,
oh,
anybody.
them funny things, them funny
Yeah,
rights of way where people can
you
go
are
for a walk.
actually allowed to cross that piece of land. Keep to the footpath, of course. You know, that's the right of way, not the
Mm,
field either side of it.
true.
So, you know, keep to the footpath. But, you know, if you haven't got a car, hop on a bus,
Mm,
you know, or walk. You know, within 40 minutes, for the most part, you can be out, you know, out on the peripheral part of a town or city. Um, and most towns and cities, I'm just thinking of Preston actually, which
hmm.
isn't far from where we live. You know, they've got a couple of parks. In fact, probably got, I think it's three public parks there, right in the middle of Preston City, and it is a city now. So, you know, wherever you are, the countryside isn't that far away. Get out
Yeah,
there, enjoy it.
what's your, and I wanted to touch on this, and this is kind of going back a little bit, but kind of ties in with what we were saying with the sort of death of. I say the death. I hope it's just like a lull, but the death of sort of the old school garden of flower beds and
Mm,
people planting pansies and all that sort of stuff. What's your thought process? And I've really enjoyed this because I've seen from an architectural perspective,
mm,
and what I've got planned, things like green roofs and things like green walls,
yeah,
where you see it in cities. I've seen it in London quite a lot. I've seen it in Rotterdam is an amazing place to go and see this sort of architecture, which is really forward thinking and environmentally conscious as well at the same time. Um, Surely that within everybody loves a green wall.
of
I
course they,
think
yeah,
most people love a green wall rather than just
a plain
you know
brick or
play
concrete.
like incorporation of that within modern infrastructure surely would be. I think it's probably going to be an easier sell than let's go back and start creating gardens again,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you want them. What's your thought process on that element? And I suppose that sort of brings in the evolution of garden design as well, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, very much so. I'm all for it. You know, and probably, you know, from your background as well, Lewis, you know, if you have trees, plants in a city, it automatically brings the temperature down as well.
Yeah, and it's the carbon
Yeah,
element of
e
bringing carbon out
exactly.
the atmosphere, and
Yeah, it's a win-win situation. And, you know, I think we should be doing more of it. And as you say, you know, if you said 30 years ago about, you know, having a green roof or, you know, a green wall, people would have thought, hello, yeah, she's off her rocker again. We knew it all along.
yeah.
Um, but, you know, it's becoming more and more mainstream. And I think in this country, we're falling behind yet
Mm.
again with environmental impact, and that's a positive environmental impact that these things have. And it's not only good for us, it'll bring the temperature down in city centres, and also it will attract beneficial insects,
And it looks good.
and it
Like
looks brilliant.
it looks for when you if you see like an established green wall, and I've done like quite a few um in my time, and they just brighten the space. You don't have to
Yeah,
have your wallpaper or anything. It just looks so good, and they're not
yeah,
that difficult to set up. It's a
no,
little bit of hydroponics, if that.
yeah,
Um, but they
exactly.
all come in kits,
Yeah,
so
and I
it's not a
think.
difficult thing.
No, and I think also, you know, I'd love to be, you know, have a secret camera and go to a place where there's, you know, green walls, and I just like to see the expression on people's faces. And I mean, I've never done it, but I can pretty well guarantee that a lot of people will actually be smiling.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
and yeah, because you know, you walk around the city, how many people do you see actually smiling when you're just
Not,
walking.
yeah.
Not
I've
many.
lived in some of the biggest cities on the planet, and no, there's not many
Nobody
happy places.
smiles. And yet something like that, I can pretty well guarantee. Because if there's insects, there's plants, there'll be insects. If there's insects, there'll be birds. And how many
Hmm.
people, don't like seeing, a little robin hopping around?
Mm.
Because that's exactly what would be attracted to the insects. So, it's a win-win situation all round. It's great for the environment. It's good for us. It's good for wildlife. So what's not to like?
Yeah, I think innovation like that, because everybody loves sort of moving forward, and nobody likes to sort of hark back and go back to things,
Mm,
thinking that obviously we've moved on from that, we've evolved from that as
yeah.
human beings. We're the advanced species on the planet. But I think innovation in that sense of like green walls, green
Yes.
roofs, the like rainwater harvesting and things like that,
Exactly.
which are so integral, I think, or should be integral to most sort of urban environments.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I know for a fact whenever I went to where did I go recently? Say relatively recently, a couple of years ago. It was Cardiff, I think, and I remember walking through Cardiff, and everybody's sort of heads down,
mm,
walking forward,
mm.
and you've got Sports Direct, other sports shops are available, and you've
Yes.
got like supermarket here and shop there and pound shop here and betting shop there, and I'm looking up,
Mm.
and the architecture that's above sort of eye level is astounding in that city. It's amazing. I'm walking with my head looking upwards, not looking where I'm going, and my partner who's with me, she was saying like, you know, how do you notice these things? She wouldn't even notice this stuff. And I'm like, well, one, probably because of my background, I look for it. But I know for a fact that she's noticed when we walk through cities and you'll see like a fully green building, a growing live building with all the green
Yeah.
wall. She will notice that
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
different and it
Yes.
stands out and it looks good. I mean, the Ivy in Manchester, they've
Mm.
got a huge green wall. And it's just a nice environment to be in.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so I think, yeah, the more any people that are going through the sort of garden design courses and degrees and everything at university and college and stuff, think innovatively
Yes.
about how you can sort of improve the environment for pollinators,
Yeah.
uh,
Exactly.
which
And
is
also, adapting what we already know.
mm,
There's a wealth of experience, a wealth of information out there. Yeah, like you say, Lewis, we don't necessarily want to go back to go forward, but we can draw on all that expertise,
100%.
all that knowledge, and find new innovative ways to promote well-being, to improve the environment. I mean, one simple thing I must just say, because this is close to my heart as well, the number of front gardens that are paved over with concrete or flags for a parking space. Yes,
Yeah,
I get that. I totally get it. But why not use gravel? Why not use gravel? Because, the rainwater will just come straight off concrete. That causes flooding. It overpowers the drainage system. If you've just got something as simple as gravel, and you can get these honeycomb meshes so that the gravel doesn't spread everywhere, and in time, plants will start growing in that gravel. And if you run over them with your car, it doesn't matter.
no,
It doesn't matter.
but
But
spiders love it as well. Spiders love
exactly. So
gravel.
something as simple as that, replacing concrete and paving slabs with, honeycomb filled with gravel that can withstand the weight of a car, and that's what it's built for, let's
Mm.
face it. Something as simple as that can make all the difference.
And for two things as well, from a construction perspective, I know it's cheaper and easier rather
Yeah.
than tarmac or concrete. And two, the sound of a car driving on gravel. There's something about the sound of a car driving
Yeah.
on gravel that I love that sound.
Yeah.
It's something that like when the smell of petrol at a petrol station.
Yeah.
I love that. But the sound of a car driving on
Yeah.
gravel there's something. I think you know what it harks back to. There's I'm showing my age now. I used to, when I was younger, there was a like a puppet program called Chigley,
Oh, yeah.
and you know, like how it was almost like highbrow in some areas.
Yeah.
And it's that view of sort of a stately home and a car pulling up to
Yes.
drop off the person. And it's like that crunch of gravel as that
Yeah.
happens, and that's what comes in my mind, and I
Yeah.
just think, oh yeah, it gives me like a comfort when I hear
Yeah.
it. It's weird,
Brilliant.
strange. So,
Yeah.
what's for you? What's the future? What do you think? What's your outlook? Is it? I know you always say you've already mentioned that you're a glass half full kind of person.
Yeah.
Are you hopeful that we can sort of create harmony with pollinators and stop this sort of this bleak outlook
Yeah.
of bees and pollinators dying
Yeah.
and we destroying the environments that they live in?
I'm a great believer in Mother Nature will have her way. Whatever we throw at her, she recovers from it one way
Mm-hmm.
or another. May not be in my lifetime because, I'm getting on a bit now, Lewis. But
I didn't say that.
no, I know you didn't, but I said it. I said it for myself. But I'm a great believer in Mother Nature. She knows far more about the natural environment. It's her world, let's face it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we've thrown at her in the past, she can recover from. And also, I think, there's that element. Mother Nature knows best. But also, if we can increase our output of information, particularly to youngsters, to the younger generation, catch them at schools, um, teach them the importance of the natural worlds in which they live, teach them the importance of pollinators and all types of wildlife. We don't own this planet. It's
Mm-hmm.
not ours. We're just stewards of it. And to my mind, we have to be the best stewards that we possibly can. I mean, it's like having a child. When you have a child, you want to do the very best you can for your child. You make mistakes along the way. Of course you do. Every parent does, including me. I've made some massive mistakes in my life bringing up my children, but they've forgiven me for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you have to nurture your children. You have to guide them in a way because we don't own our children any more than we own the planet. We are stewards of our children. So if we treat the planet like we treat our children, then it can only be a good thing. And the future, therefore, is bright.
Yeah, I like that. It's that sort of stewardship. I think it it's and that's the sort of right back at the beginning of this conversation, the fascin. I was speaking to a friend last night, Louis, about my fascination with veganism. Although I'm not vegan,
Yeah.
it is bonkers. But I just find the ideology and it's because I really understand the ethical motivations behind
Mm.
it. I really do. I'm on board with that. But then at the same time, it's, how do I put this? It's almost the sort of, and this is not me saying vegans think this, but from my perspective, it's almost like of that God complex of we are so important that we get to dictate what happens on this planet and who eats what and how it gets eaten and how, understand and that lack of understanding that we are part of this. We're not above this looking down and manipulating and maneuvering things. We are part of this ecosystem, no matter how much you want to believe that we are a part of it. And I think that's the important thing that humans need to realize is in the universal terms, we know very little.
We know next to nothing. We know
Yeah.
next to nothing.
And
And
that humility is so, so important that I
it
feel
is.
like we're kind of losing touch with.
Yeah. We're part of nature. We we're an intrinsic part of nature, just as nature is an intrinsic part of us. We cannot live without the natural world. We
Mm.
cannot. It's almost as if, whatever viewpoint you have, and I think this can be, extrapolated as well. Whatever viewpoint you have, whatever your belief system, you have to, in my philosophy, you have to take into account the beliefs of others as well. Whether
Mhm.
you agree with it or not is almost irrelevant. But as human beings, we have to acknowledge different perspectives. And I think this goes back to climate change. No, there are climate change deniers. There are those who say climate change is definitely happening. I suspect it's somewhere in the middle. But we have to acknowledge, and I think that's one of the, a malaise of modern society is that, yeah, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. If you don't
Yeah.
agree with what I'm saying, then you must be wrong. That is not the case.
That's so like I've had a couple of conversations, friends who listen to the podcast, and they're avid listeners, and I thank each and every one of them. But one of them keeps saying you're not that confrontational, and I'm like, well, the problem is with that, and the way I see it, and this is the whole sort of reason why I kind of started this podcast is, look, I'm not vegan. And this is the only thing I'm in essence, I'm quite opposed to veganism, but I do want to understand
Exactly.
their thought process and their
Exactly.
stance on it. And the more I speak to people that are vegan, the more I understand. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my point of view. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop eating meat, but it makes me understand their position a little bit more, so that when they make a decision or do something, I understand the reasons why they made that decision. And it's the
Yes.
same politically. I've had reform councillors on here. I've had Green Party members on here. And I've tried for Labour and I've tried for Conservative, but none of them want to come on. I mean, my MP agreed. He's a Labour, Oliver Ryan, I'll mention him. He agreed to come on. And then because I had a Reform UK councillor on, he decided he didn't want to come on because I was supporting Reform. And
how is that? Oh, come on.
Well, I tried to sort of explain. I'm not. I feel like everybody needs to understand where everybody else is coming from. And at the minute, nobody does, because you're either with us or against us. And it's like, that's not the case. And I think throughout all of society, whether you are for something or against something or really don't give a damn, I think understanding across the board is what's needed. So that civil discourse, that civil discussion about, what do you think about this subject? Well, I think X, Y, Z. Oh, I don't quite agree with you there. I think X, Y, Z. Somewhere there is some sort of middle ground where each party makes a concession and everybody agrees and moves on with their life.
Yeah, because life isn't black and white. Life is grey. The boundary is blurred, and that's where we all live. We live in that blurred boundary.
Yeah, and anybody that sort of says I 100% agree with X is probably not true. The likelihood is, and we see it all the time with, the media sensationalizes, and it's either left or right, or rich or poor, or black or white, or whereas 95 to probably 98% of us are somewhere central within that argument, and it's the 2% that are the sort of polarizing points on it.
Yeah.
And I think with a subject like what we've been discussing over the past hour or so, 2 hours, is I think most people will agree that bees are, and pollinators as a whole, are a necessity.
Absolutely.
I guarantee that's probably the case. And then you will have sort of dividing opinions of, I don't want to spend hours in my garden planting X, Y, and Z. And then you'll have people that will want to spend every waking minute that they have spare in their garden tending to it, making it sort of a paradise for these. But somewhere in between them polarizing points, there's a happy middle ground where the winners are
Yes.
people like me and you and the bees
Yeah.
and the pollinators that actually win.
Yeah. And we're quite happy just to potter along, do our bit, feel good about it, and we don't make a fuss about it. We just get on with it.
Yeah, that I think that happens when you get to a certain age.
Yeah.
And I mistook it early in my 30s for cynicism.
No,
And it's
no,
not
it's not.
cynicism. I just don't have the don't have the wherewithal to argue with you. You are more than welcome to your opinion, but I'm going to carry on living the way I want to live over here, and you can go your way. So and I think most people get to that age, probably after 30, mid 30s, where priorities shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think children are a big impact on that. I know from the minute my daughter was born, my priorities shifted drastically.
Inevitably.
Everybody told me before that it would happen, and I didn't
you don't
believe one of
them,
them.
do you? No, you never believe it until it happens.
Not at all. I didn't believe one word that came out of any of my friends' mouths that advised me. And then as soon as she came along, it was like, you were right.
They were right. Yeah.
And I think it's important. And I look at the world now, and I look at I suppose the legacy that I want to leave for my daughter. And that's precisely what it is. It's for my daughter. I'm no longer really living a selfish existence. I'm living for what I can sort of instill, whether that be values, material, possessions, or land, or whatever it be, or ethos or ethics. Every decision that I make has got sort of her in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if a lot of people took that, and I try and not always succeed, but I take that sort of method and apply it to other people that aren't my daughter and aren't my family.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I try and make a difference in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Maureen. It was everything that I wished and hoped for the past 6 months.
Bless you. Well, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure. I can't believe it's 2 hours since we sort of logged on, as it were. So
honestly,
I've had a ball.
Every single guest I've had, I always warn, look, leave 2.5 hours free.
Yeah,
because that 2 hours disappears very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, look, the first hour is generally getting to know one another and almost building that rapport, even though we've sort of spoken before this.
Yeah.
But sometimes this would be the first time that I've seen somebody or met somebody. And then the second hour is generally when the juicy and the good stuff comes,
get down to the nitty gritty.
when people's guard drops and I can sort of actually get to it.
Yeah.
But it's always subjects that I'm sort of really intrigued by and really interested in. And bees are always, I don't know what it is about them. And I think it's the facts, I think, like a bumblebee physics says a bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly.
Exactly. But it does. Yeah, Mother Nature knows best.
And then every other food stuff across the planet has an expiration date, but honey doesn't.
No.
Yeah, don't worry about it. And it's just it's things like that almost break the system that we are sort of used to.
Yeah.
That I look at it and think, well, why?
Yeah.
Well, I've got such an inquisitive sort of mind that I'm like, well, why does a bee fly then? I want to know why a bee flies. And just sort of understanding that world.
Yes.
You've gone a long way to helping me, and I think it is on my list to own a hive.
But I have to say, Lewis, I do. Perhaps a final word from me is that no matter how much you know, no matter how much you learn, there's always more.
Every day
you can never know everything about anything.
No.
So you just have to keep learning, researching, taking on board, and changing your mind if necessary in
That's
the
the
light
other
of
thing.
new information.
So that was the other thing that sort of frustrates me. Where I know, obviously, I promise this will be the last point. I can waffle, but the sort of when I was talking about the reasons why I wanted to start the podcast and sort of speak to people about subjects that I'm interested in and subjects that I fundamentally disagree with, but I'm interested in the 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 thought process of or the sort of societal norm is you don't change your mind, you stick to a position. Um, and for me, ultimately, there's been several things that I've sort of changed my view on. I've
Mm,
changed my
mm,
opinion on, and I think, oh, in fact, no, I can get on board with that. I didn't know.
mm,
So, for instance, one of the things is, and this is by no means an advert or an advocacy for Green Party, but I kind of categorize them as sort of um, out of the mainstream.
mhm,
They weren't a serious contender. But then when I started speaking to people that were part of it, I was kind of thinking, well, I kind of agree with that.
mm,
And I kind of
mm.
agree with that. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that I'm voting for them or I would vote for them. I probably going to abscond
Yeah,
to be honest, because none of them sort of tick the boxes that I want ticking. But, if I could vote probably all four of them in, then most of my boxes will be ticked, if that makes
yeah,
sense. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But it does change my opinion slightly. And I'm more than
yes.
happy to change my opinion. And vice versa. If more information came out and it changed my opinion again, I'm fluid. I
So
can
be it.
change again. And
Yeah,
and I think this is the thing, most people don't want to lose face or feel like they lose face by being wrong. But ultimately, you know, that's what the whole point. Information.
yeah.
Like you mentioned at towards the end about teaching children in schools. One of my biggest annoyances is with mobile phones and this hoo-ha about having mobile phones in schools. And don't get me wrong, I understand the challenges. But if I came to a teacher in the 1960s and said, I have a device that will keep every child's attention in your classroom for hours on end without you having to shout, without you having to raise your voice and corporal punishment or anything along those lines, I guarantee every single teacher on the planet will go, yes, give me that device now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we now have it, and they're talking about banning
But
it.
it's funny.
Move with the times, like
Oh,
use
dear.
it. And
Yeah,
especially for
yeah.
things like what you're, bees and garden design. I'm not expecting a 25-year-old teacher that's newly qualified out of university to know anything other than there's a
No.
bumblebee and a honeybee, and bees make honey and have
Yeah.
pollen. They don't know more about that
No,
subject than people like
no.
you, but all that information's online.
It's there. It's available.
Now, why wouldn't you want to use that
Mm,
in
mm,
in education, whether it be for this subject, whether it be for construction, whether it be for um, politics, or whether it be for wildlife or
mm.
chemistry. All this information is at the tap of a button
Yeah.
at every young person. You're basically carrying around what would be a public library back in the day
Yes.
in
Yeah,
your pocket
yeah,
all day, every day.
yeah, yeah,
Utilize that tool.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad I got that point out because I wanted to touch on that before and I forgot, and then it came back around again. It does happen.
Yeah,
So
excellent.
thank you very much, Maureen. If people want to read what you've written, where do they go?
Well, the probably easiest is to have a look at my website, which
Okay,
is,
which is
yeah, www.thebeegarden, that's lowercase, all one word, .co.uk. So
brilliant.
www.thebeegarden.co.uk.
And I'm assuming, are you on social? I'm not sure whether you'd be on social media. I
I'm
think
just on
you are.
Facebook. I'm
Yeah.
not as I'm not very good at social media.
I don't like it either, Maureen. It's
Yeah.
it's it's almost like a a necessity. Yeah, it's like you're gonna have to do it, but I don't want to do it. I never do it. I'm absolutely dreadful. I always start the week with, I'm going to post every day this week, and then it gets to Wednesday, I go, I can't be bothered. I've got things on. But thank you very, very much. It's been
You're very welcome.
Everything I wished, and thank you very much. See you all later, everybody.
Thank you.